Good evening, Bulldog fans. And Steve, it's about as good an evening as it gets for a Bulldog fan. Mississippi State 37, Louisiana State 7. And if you had to say which one looked like the number 12 ranked team in the country tonight, it certainly wasn't the visiting team.
You know, David, and that's one of the things that we've talked about at the beginning of the year is Auburn and LSU both seem to both be a little bit overrated. And there was some question about which one was perhaps the most overrated. Well, the Bulldogs are going to get an opportunity to try them both on for size. I think we felt, David, going into the ball game that State was the better team, and then with the home field advantage would likely win a close ball game. I don't think anybody in the country called a 30-point win for the Bulldogs, but it's certainly one we'll remember for a long time.
I think LSU will remember it a long time, too, because they got beaten at their own traditional game. Mississippi State lined up and played power run, play action, set up what passes that Nick Fitzgerald needed to throw. He connected on enough of those throws, and State just played, as Coach Dan Mullen said, about as balanced an offensive game as you could ask for.
David, on both sides of the line of scrimmage, from the very first possession for each team, Mississippi State was by far the more physical team. Arden Key came to play tonight. Not sure of his health. He was really a non-factor in the ball game. He had the one big sack, the first sack allowed by Bulldog offense all year, but it was just the one sack. And it really came at a point when the game was already kind of trended Mississippi State's way. But, David, I think by and large, Mississippi State showed an identity tonight, and that was the fact that they could come out and play a more physical brand of football against a team that's used to bullying people around.
Not only that, the Bulldogs, their one mistake of the game really was when a short kickoff, and that's a very rare mistake for Logan Cook this year because he's been killing his kickoffs, goes out of bounds. LSU takes advantage of a short field, puts in basically 6 offensive linemen plus a tight end, powers it, gets down the field, ties the game up. Mississippi State comes right back. A, the offense counters it and gets the lead back, but B, the defense totally adjusted to it and, again, took away what LSU does best to the point that LSU, by the second half, we were really scratching our heads. Why are you still trying that interior power run? It ain't working.
What was amazing, too, David, is they were running so much motion and shifts just to run some inside zone stuff, which is – it's not LSU football. What we've always seen from LSU is line up, and, of course, it's a different change in velocity with Les Miles being gone, but this is a team that's been recruited to kind of line up in a 2 tight end fullback set and just run right at you and run you over. That wasn't the case tonight. We saw a lot of misdirection. We saw a lot of counter plays and some outside sweeps and things of that nature. And the State defense, to their credit, ran to the football exceptionally well and really closed a lot of that stuff out.
And made tackles on the first and certainly by the second time. There were not a lot of broken tackles by LSU.
That's true, David. And I thought Leo Lewis was outstanding. Mark McLaurin, outstanding. The defensive line, short Corey Thomas, outstanding. The Bulldogs were good at every level of defense. And this, you know, in a recurring theme, this may have been the best defensive performance of the season by far.
Well, of course, you know, we're measuring against the best team State's played, but they certainly made LSU look like a much lesser team the way State just lined up, played more physical. Let's look at Nick Fitzgerald's game. I mean, 2 years ago, or a year ago, he goes down there, has a terrible start. He admitted it. He was a little frustrated by LSU's defensive team. Tonight, he comes back. Yes, 15 of 23, not a great percentage. He made the pass plays when they mattered. He stood in under pressure. I thought, the most underappreciated thing was the big open touchdown pass to Keith Mixon. He stood in with the linebacker, number 40, about to put a helmet in his chest and still delivered. He took some cheap shots, drew some penalties as a result, got back out there, made the plays. He ended up, between his running and his passing, not just with 4 touchdowns. He had 2 fewer yards than LSU's entire offense had.
It's incredible, David. And you mentioned that play-action pass to Keith Mixon. That was really the straw that broke the camel's back. State was already in command. At that point, any hope of an LSU comeback pretty much was erased by that play. And Keith Mixon did a great job selling his part. Jordan Thomas does his part. And you're right, the victim of 2 targeting penalties tonight, Nick Fitzgerald, stays in, shows how tough he is, and on that play hangs in there, staring down the barrel of a linebacker gun, as you say, and it makes a perfect strike to Keith Mixon, who runs the rest of the way. And at that point, the Bulldog fans could hang around and enjoy the evening because the outcome of that ball game was pretty much decided.
Yeah, I kind of suspect that when all the cell phone cameras were going off there between the third and fourth quarters, it probably showed up on satellite somewhere, as bright as that was. But talk about the run game, too, especially after the first series, too. And State did score early in the game, but in the second quarter, I thought Mississippi State did such a fabulous job of setting the edge with not just the tight ends, which did it well, but even the offensive tackles. Martinez Rankin one time just did a beautiful job getting out there, springing the running back for a gain. Stuart Reese played a great game, and the guards pulled into positions. Just like we said, they beat LSU at their own game, and I think the Tigers were almost in shock.
I agree, David, and this was Mississippi State's most complete game in a while. I mean, we talk about the Texas A&M game last year. Kind of came out of nowhere, but this is a ball game. LSU didn't, State didn't sneak up on LSU. They understood what was at stake here. But David, this offensive line the very first week, people were kind of scratching their heads. Played exceptional tonight. Stuart Reese, his best game as a Bulldog thus far. But, David, the running game today, Harris Williams, great cutting lanes, good decisions by Nick Fitzgerald, made the offensive line look good because it was a team concept. And I think that's the thing probably that you take away from this ball game is that even when there's the whole requirement to be physical and to just kind of dip your hips and strike and get out there and then be the better man, State did that because when LSU challenged their offensive line, when you mentioned that possession with a unbalanced line, kind of surprised State a little bit. But State did answer the charge, and David would be remiss if we didn't mention the play of Jace Christman. Unbelievable. That has been one of those things. It's been a burr in the Bulldog saddle. He comes out, has a perfect game, found out yesterday that he was starting. An unbelievable night for him and for Mississippi State.
Not only that, when State, if they were going to, I think, really set the tone of the game, yes, it was Nick Fitzgerald's touchdown right before halftime. That was huge. And as I pointed out to Nick, too, they had 13 seconds left, but Dan Mullen had saved a timeout. So on that play, they had the luxury to throw, run, and even if the ball was incomplete or caught in bounds, they could stop the clock again. But Fitzgerald made a read, and he told me it was supposed to be a pass play. He read it and kind of turned his body. He didn't get really flush with the goal line, but he's able to get enough angle, much like that touchdown against A&M last year, and power his way across. And then State comes back, gets the ball to start out the second half. They only get a field goal out of it. But that field goal, you can almost feel like it counted way more than 3 points in LSU minds.
It's true, David. And that was really a calming effect for the Bulldogs, too, as you go out there. And it was a 46, 47-yarder that he hit, and he admitted that he was really nervous about the first one. But after the first one, he said Logan Cook did a really good job of just kind of keeping him confident, keeping him loose on the sidelines. And so when they went out there, he told him every time, he goes, hey, you got it. And he did get it. And that's the thing around Bulldog fans. We talked about the kicking thing. It's always been one of those things you kind of hold your breath. But tonight, Bulldog fans happy to exhale and happy to enjoy a big win.
Of course, Harris Williams, 146 net yards. He did not score, but he averaged 6.3 yards per carry compared to LSU's Darius Geis, a great running back, who averaged 5.1 but only finished with 76 yards. And here, to me, is the key stat of the game. LSU is a team built around, I guess, power running, power defense, controlling the clock. LSU had the ball 24 minutes, 5 seconds. Mississippi State, 35 minutes, 55 seconds on that. If you had reversed those numbers, we would have totally believed it because that's how LSU plays the game. As I keep saying, Mississippi State lined up and defeated the Bengal Tigers at their own game and actually did it better than LSU has done in quite a while. That is just a volume statement on how far Dan Mullen has progressed this team. And it's still, by far, the best is yet to come. Now, catching up on a couple of things, injuries. We talked in pregame that Corey Thomas was going to miss with a foot injury. He was seen on the sidelines with a scooter, and as it turned out, so was Gabe Miles, both foot injuries. Dan Mullen updated a little bit on those injury situations, as well as Malik Deer.
He did, David, and he did mention that maybe you get Malik back next week. Gabe is kind of a week-to-week thing, said he would kind of be questionable for next week, depends on how he goes in practice. He all but said Corey Thomas out for a few weeks here, at least a couple. We'll see what happens. But the good thing is State has numbers, and we discussed that in the pregame, and it showed up today because Trey Brown, Braxton Hoyt, tackles for loss. Grant Harris, almost a forgotten man on this team a year ago, is becoming one of State's better interior defensive linemen. And Jeff Simmons, again, another big sack. He's becoming a disruptive force in this league.
So, even though he is a friend of Coach Dan Mullen's, we shouldn't make too much fun. We'll remind that Coach Ed Orgeron is now 0-3 on Scott Field. Got a little good trend developing there. And Mississippi State now 1-0 SEC. Here's the question, Steve. Does Mississippi State jump into the polls this week?
There's no question. State was just outside the cusp, and I think anytime that you beat a number 12 team or top 15 team the way Mississippi State did, they're sure to fall a great deal, and State's sure to rise a great deal.
Will LSU fall past Mississippi State in the pollsters' minds?
Well, it's only fair. I mean, honestly, if you're making that two teams that are equally situated and you lose, one beats the other by 30 at this point in the season, I think that's probably fair. I think Mississippi State could possibly see itself in the teens and LSU in the 20s.
So sometime tomorrow when the Associated Press and the coaches' polls come out, we expect Mississippi State to be in both of them, return to the polls for Coach Dan Mullen's program. And then it's time to get ready. Coach Mullen said he's giving the Bulldogs off tomorrow. A little bit of a change in strategy, but I think it's because of the road trip to Georgia this weekend that they're going to go ahead and take Sunday off and probably practice Monday. So we'll be talking to Mullen players, probably Coach Todd Grantham as well on Monday, then catch other players on Tuesday. But it'll be a happy bunch of Bulldogs celebrating tomorrow. I know it's a happy bunch of y'all Bulldogs out there celebrating tonight. Enjoy it and enjoy responsibly. And by the way, for everybody, the 60,000 plus who turned out at Scott Field tonight, Good job. Coach Mullen went out of his way to compliment the students and the fans for creating a home field advantage for the Bulldogs. They pressed it to the full advantage. Mississippi State 37, Louisiana State 7. Mississippi State now 3-0, halfway to bowl eligibility already, and 1-0 SEC. For Steve Robertson, for Gene Swindoll and Mike Nemeth of Gene'sPageDogsBite.com, this is David Murray from Scott Field, Davis Wade Stadium.